There's still a lot of uncertainty tonight in the impeachment proceedings involving a Fayette County circuit judge. Lawmakers in the State House are accusing Judge Julie Goodman of abusing her power and authority in office.
The House passed a resolution calling for Goodman's impeachment, but there are conflicting messages about what happens next. A Franklin circuit judge deemed the resolution null and void. The Kentucky Supreme Court put out an opinion on Monday saying state lawmakers have to stop the proceedings, but Republicans are signaling that the trial could still happen.
Senate President Robert Stivers said today that the Senate is carefully reviewing the ruling and its implications, and he says the Senate's focus is still to carry out its constitutional duties. Well, tonight, two former Kentucky attorneys general are weighing in on the House resolution to impeach Judge Goodman.
WKYT's Jackson Plank talked to Attorneys General Fred Cowan and Greg Stumbo about the case. He has our top story tonight.
That impeachment proceeding, it wasn't proper from the word go.
That's the job of the judicial branch. That's not the job of the legislature to serve as a backstop.
Two former Kentucky attorneys general are weighing in after the Kentucky Senate scheduled impeachment proceedings against Judge Julie Goodman after the Kentucky Supreme Court made its ruling Monday. Attorneys General Fred Cowan and Greg Stumbo say the state legislature should abide by the high court's ruling.
The Supreme Court said in its decision was, yes, the legislature still has the right to impeach judges, but only in cases of really egregious behavior.
In its ruling, the court found the impeachment petition wasn't legally sound because it was never sworn or verified by affidavit, as the state law requires. Further, they say it would be an unprecedented move to impeach a judge based on his or her conduct or ruling. Stumbo, who previously led a 1991 impeachment committee against Butch Burnett while serving as House Speaker, says the petition should have been stopped from the start.
On its face, the petition was insufficient. It should have never moved forward with it. The Constitution's clear.
Cowan says the Constitution sets limits on each branch, and if the Senate moves forward anyway, it risks upending that balance and weakening the state's co-equal branches of government. Stumbo says lawmakers should drop the case and move on.
They've got a lot better things to do than worrying about an invalid petition on impeachment.
Jackson Plank, WKYT.
And attorney Cheryl Snyder, who has litigated several high-profile cases before the Kentucky Supreme Court on the Constitution, is speaking out about the higher court's ruling.
Snyder says the Supreme Court's ruling is a landmark decision, as this is the first time there has been an attempt to impeach a judge, and the Supreme Court's ruling vindicates the independence of the judiciary.
And I think that's the important dichotomy for the public to understand, is the court's not saying judges can never be impeached. They're just saying what they can be impeached for and what they can't be impeached for.
Judge Goodman's counsel released a statement to us tonight saying Goodman is grateful the Kentucky Supreme Court put a stop to the impeachment proceedings, in part saying, quote, with this decision, the court has restored the ability of Kentucky's judges to rule on cases based on the law and the facts, free from the chilling threat of impeachment, end quote. They go on to say this ruling is a win for preventing government overreach. You can find the full